The transport ship docked with Galactic Academy Station at exactly 0800 hours. Tom pressed his face against the small window and watched as the massive station came into view. The structure was beautiful in a way that made him feel small. Curved. Metal and glass sections spiraled around a central core that gleamed like a jewel against the purple gas giant below. "Look at that," Maria whispered from the seat beside him. Her dark eyes were wide with wonder. "It's like a crystal flower floating." "In space," Alex leaned over from across the aisle. "The pictures didn't do it justice. This place is huge." He was the tallest of the three humans, with sandy hair and nervous energy. That made him tap his fingers constantly. The other passengers on the transport had been giving them strange looks for the entire journey. Most were returning students from various worlds, but none looked quite like the humans. Some had blue skin and extra arms. Others had fur or scales or eyes that seemed too large for their faces. A few looked almost human except for small details like pointed ears or different colored blood showing through translucent skin. "Attention passengers," the ship's automated voice announced. "We have docked at Galactic Academy Station. Please gather your belongings and prepare for disembarkation. Welcome to your new academic home." Tom grabbed his single bag and followed the others toward the exit. The humans had packed light compared to their fellow passengers. Most of the alien students had multiple cases and containers. Some even had what looked like small robots carrying their things. The docking bay was enormous. The ceiling stretched up so high that Tom had to tilt his head back to see it. Students moved in groups across the polished floor, their voices creating a constant buzz of different languages and sounds. Some students made clicking noises when they talked. Others seemed to communicate through color changes in their skin. "Thomas Anderson, Maria Santos, and Alex Chun," a voice called out. A tall figure approached them. The being had pale blue skin and 4 arms, each ending in delicate fingers. Its face was narrow and elegant, with large silver eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "I am Dr. Kalen, your academic advisor. Welcome to Galactic Academy." "Thank you, Dr. Kalen," Tom said, trying not to stare at the extra arms. "We're excited to be here." Dr. Kalen's expression shifted in what might have been a smile. "I'm sure you are. However, we have some administrative matters to address first. Please follow me." They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were covered in a material that changed colors as they passed, showing images of different worlds and star systems. Other students moved past them in both directions, but Tom noticed that many stopped to stare at the 3 humans. "Are we that obvious?" Maria asked quietly. "I'm afraid so," Dr. Kalen replied, overhearing. "Humans are quite rare at the Academy. In fact, you are the first of your species to attend." They entered a large office with windows that looked out over the station's central core. Dr. Kalen moved to a desk that seemed to be made of light rather than solid material. As soon as the alien touched it, information began appearing in the air above its surface. "Now then," Dr. Kalen said, reading from the floating text. "According to your classification, you are all from a Class 12 hazard world. This means you will need to complete mandatory safety orientation before you can begin regular classes." "Safety orientation?" Alex asked. "What kind of safety?" "Basic survival protocols. Emergency procedures, hazard recognition, standard curriculum for beings from dangerous worlds." Dr. Kalen's tone suggested this was routine. "Most students complete this when they are quite young, but given your world's classification, the Academy requires additional instruction." Tom felt heat rise in his cheeks. "How long will this take? Several days, perhaps a week?" "It depends on how quickly you learn." Dr. Kalen touched the desk again and new information appeared. "Your temporary quarters are in Section C, Level 7. You'll find everything you need there. Classes begin tomorrow at 0900 hours." As they left the office, Tom noticed a group of students watching them from across the corridor. They were whispering among themselves and occasionally pointing in the human's direction. One of them, a tall being with pale skin and white hair, seemed to be leading the conversation. "Great," Maria muttered. "We're the remedial students. Their quarters were small but comfortable. Each human had a private room with a bed, desk, and personal hygiene facilities. The common area had a food synthesizer and entertainment system. The windows looked out over the station's outer ring, where ships came and went in a constant stream. "This is actually pretty nice," Alex said, testing the bed in his room. "Better than the dorms back home." Tom was less impressed. The safety system seemed excessive. Warning lights and emergency equipment were everywhere. The walls displayed constant reminders about proper atmosphere levels and emergency procedures. Even the food synthesizer had multiple safety warnings. "They really think we're primitive," Maria said, reading one of the warnings. "Listen to this. Warning: hot surfaces may cause injury. Allow cooling time before contact." "Maybe they have a point," Alex said. "We are from Earth. That place is pretty dangerous compared to this." Before Tom could respond, the door chimed. Dr. Kalen stood in the hallway with 3 other beings. 2 were the same species as the doctor, with blue skin and 4 arms. The third was different entirely, with gray skin and large black eyes. "I hope you are settling in well," Dr. Kalen said. "These are some of your fellow students. Reth and Nala are Altarians like myself. Nyx is Centaurian." The alien gestured. "To each being in turn. They have volunteered to help you adjust to life at the academy." Reth stepped forward with what Tom assumed was a friendly expression. "We heard about your arrival. It must be difficult coming from such a dangerous world." "Earth isn't that bad," Maria said defensively. "Oh, but it is," Nala added, her voice gentle but condescending. "A Class 12 world has so many hazards. Natural disasters, predators, atmospheric variations. We cannot imagine living in such conditions." Nyx spoke for the first time. "Your safety training will be very important. We all completed similar courses when we were children, but for beings from your world, extra instruction is necessary." "We appreciate your concern," Tom said carefully. "But humans have been managing Earth's dangers for thousands of years." "Of course," Reth said with what seemed like sympathy. "But this is different. The Academy has very specific safety protocols. Technology you may not understand. Situations that require proper training." The conversation continued for several minutes, with the alien students offering advice and explanations that felt more like lectures. They spoke about the humans as if they were children who needed protection and guidance. Tom found himself getting more irritated with each passing moment. After the aliens left, the 3 humans sat in their common area in silence. "Did that feel patronizing to you?" Maria asked finally. "Very," Alex replied. "They're treating us like we're stupid." Tom stared out the window at the stars beyond the station. "Maybe we'll surprise them." The first week at Galactic Academy passed in a blur of new experiences and strange encounters. Tom found himself in classes with beings who had evolved under completely different conditions than humans. The Altarians moved with fluid grace, their 4 arms allowing them to take notes and operate equipment simultaneously. The Centaurians were methodical and precise, approaching every task with careful calculation. Tom's first real class was Advanced Chemistry with Professor Dren, a short being with orange skin and too many eyes. The laboratory was filled with equipment that looked both familiar and alien. Glass containers held liquids that glowed with their own light. Machines hummed quietly as they mixed compounds that would have been impossible to create on Earth. "Today we will be synthesizing trilithium compounds," Professor Dren announced. "Please note that all safety protocols must be followed precisely. The containment fields are designed to prevent any harmful exposure." Tom partnered with Reth, who had made it clear that he was doing the human a favor. The Altarian handled the equipment with the confidence of someone who had never experienced real danger. Everything in the lab was designed to be safe, with multiple backup systems and warning indicators. "The process is quite simple," Reth explained as he began measuring chemicals. "The containment field will protect us from any harmful vapors. Even if something goes wrong, the automatic systems will handle it." Tom watched as Reth worked, but something felt wrong. The containment field around their work area was flickering slightly. and there was a faint smell in the air that reminded him of burning plastic. He had smelled that odor before, back on Earth, usually right before electrical equipment failed. "Reth," Tom said quietly. "I think something is wrong with the containment field." The Altarian looked up from his work. "Impossible. These systems are completely reliable. The Academy has used them for decades without incident." But Tom's instincts were screaming at him. The flickering was getting worse and the smell was getting stronger. Around the lab, other students continued their work, oblivious to what Tom was seeing. Even Professor Dren seemed unaware of the problem. "Everyone needs to step back from the containment fields," Tom said loudly. Now, the class stopped what they were doing and stared at him. Professor Dren's many eyes focused on Tom with what looked like annoyance. "Mr. Anderson, please do not interrupt the class with unfounded concerns. The safety systems are..." The containment field around Tom and Reth's station failed completely. Toxic vapor began pouring out of their experiment, filling the air with a greenish cloud that made Tom's eyes water. But instead of panicking, Tom held his breath and moved quickly. He had grown up on a world where breathing the wrong air could kill you, so holding his breath was second nature. While the alien students stood frozen in shock, Tom located the emergency ventilation control and activated it. Fresh air began flowing into the lab, clearing the toxic vapor. Only then did he take a breath and look around at his classmates. The alien students were still processing what had happened. Professor Dren was frantically checking the safety systems, his many eyes wide with disbelief. Reth was staring at Tom as if he had performed magic. "How did you know?" Reth asked. "The warning systems never activated." "I could smell it," Tom said simply. "And the field was flickering." "Flickering?" Professor Dren approached them, his voice shaking slightly. "The containment fields do not flicker. They are either active or inactive." Tom pointed to another station across the lab. "That one is flickering too, and that one." He indicated several more stations where the same subtle signs were visible. Professor Dren checked each station Tom had pointed out. All of them showed early signs of system failure that would have gone unnoticed until it was too late. The alien students watched in amazement as their professor shut down the entire lab for emergency maintenance. "Class is dismissed," Professor Dren announced. "We will resume when the systems have been fully inspected." As the students filed out, Tom noticed the way they looked at him. Some seemed impressed, others confused, but all of them were clearly surprised that the primitive human had detected danger that their advanced technology had missed. The pattern repeated itself over the following days. In the cafeteria, Maria noticed that one of the food synthesizers was making an unusual sound. While the alien students debated whether to report it, Maria calmly moved everyone away from the machine. Minutes later, it exploded in a shower. Sparks and synthetic food paste. "How did you know it would do that?" asked Nala, staring at the destroyed machine. "It sounded wrong," Maria replied, "like the motor was about to burn out. But the diagnostic systems showed it was functioning." "Normally," a Centauran student protested. Maria shrugged. "Machines make noise when they're breaking down. You learn to listen for it." The alien students exchanged glances. They had grown up with technology that always worked perfectly, maintained by automated systems that prevented failures before they occurred. The idea that someone could predict equipment failure by listening to it was completely foreign to them. During a zero-gravity sports session, Alex prevented what could have been a serious accident. The activity involved moving through a three-dimensional obstacle course using small thrusters attached to their suits. Most of the alien students were graceful and skilled, having practiced in zero gravity since childhood. Alex was clumsy by comparison, bumping into obstacles and overcorrecting his movements. But when a Centaurian student named Cole lost control during a momentum exercise, Alex was the only one who reacted quickly enough to help. Cole had been moving too fast through a narrow passage when his thruster malfunctioned. He was heading directly toward a solid barrier that would have caused serious injury. The other students watched in horror, but none of them moved to help. Alex pushed off from a nearby wall and intercepted Cole's path, absorbing most of the impact with his own body. Both students tumbled through the air, but Alex managed to guide them to a safe landing area. "Are you hurt?" Alex asked, checking Cole for injuries. The Centaurian shook his head, his large eyes wide with shock. I froze. I knew I was going to hit the wall, but I could not move." "That's normal," Alex said. "Fear does that sometimes. The important thing is that you're okay." The instructor, a being with tentacles instead of arms, floated over to them. "That was excellent reflexes, Alex. How did you react so quickly?" "I saw he was in trouble," Alex replied. "Someone had to do something." Later, as the students changed out of their zero-gravity suits, Tom overheard a conversation between several alien students. "Did you see how fast the human moved?" One of them was saying it was like he knew what was going to happen before it did. "They all do that," another replied. "In chemistry class, the Anderson human detected system failure before our sensors did, and the Santos human predicted equipment failure by sound alone. Perhaps there is more to these Deathworlders than we assumed," a third student added thoughtfully. Tom smiled to himself as he finished changing. The alien students were beginning to notice that humans possessed skills they lacked. But Tom suspected they had no idea what those skills really meant or where they came from. As the three humans walked back to their quarters, Maria voiced what they were all thinking. "They're not stupid," she said, "but they've never had to deal with real danger before. Everything in their world is safe and predictable." "That's going to be a problem someday," Alex added. "What happens when something goes wrong and their safety systems fail?" Tom thought about the upcoming mandatory safety training and wondered if the alien students might learn something valuable from watching humans who had grown up expecting things to go wrong. On Earth, survival meant being ready for anything. Here at the Academy, it seemed like no one expected anything to go wrong at all. The difference between those two worldviews was about to become very important. The mandatory safety training session was scheduled for 1,400 hours in the Academy's main safety center. Tom, Maria, and Alex walked through the corridors toward what they expected to be another boring lecture about basic survival skills they had learned as children. "I still can't believe we have to do this," Maria said, checking the time on her personal device. "We've been handling emergencies all week while everyone else just watches." "At least it's only supposed to take a few hours," Alex replied. "Then we can get back to real classes." Tom noticed that they were not alone in the corridors. Small groups of alien students were heading in the same direction, though they seemed to be going somewhere different. When Tom looked closer, he realized they were going to an observation area above the safety center. "Are they coming to watch us?" Tom asked. Maria looked around and saw what Tom had noticed. "Looks like it. Great. We're the entertainment." The safety center was a large room filled with mock-ups of emergency equipment and training stations. Holographic displays showed different types of hazards and proper responses. Everything was clean and organized, designed to teach safety procedures in a controlled environment. Professor Weiland stood at the front of the room, a tall Altarian with white hair and an expression of bored authority. He had been teaching safety courses for decades and clearly viewed this session as a routine task. "Welcome to Mandatory Safety Orientation," Professor Weiland announced as the three humans took their seats. "Today we will cover essential survival skills that all students must master before participating in Academy activities." Through the transparent walls of the observation area above, Tom could see alien students settling in to watch. Reth was there, along with Nala, Nix, and at least 20 others. Some were pointing at the humans and whispering among themselves. "Our first topic is recognizing hull breach alarms," Professor Weiland continued, activating a holographic display. "When you hear this sound, you must immediately proceed to the nearest emergency station." A loud wailing noise filled the room. Tom had heard similar alarms before, but this one was different from the warning systems used on Earth ships. Still, the principle was the same. Loud noise means danger, find safety equipment, follow procedures. "The Academy uses a 3-tone system," Professor Weiland explained. Single tone indicates minor hazard. Double tone indicates moderate danger. Triple tone indicates immediate threat to life. Maria raised her hand. What if the alarm system fails? How do you recognize a hull breach without audible warning? Professor Weiland looked surprised by the question. The alarm system does not fail. It has multiple redundant backups and automatic maintenance protocols. But what if it did fail? Maria pressed. How would you know? That is not a scenario we need to consider, Professor Weiland replied dismissively. The Academy's safety systems are completely reliable. Tom exchanged glances with his friends. They had all grown up on a world where assuming technology would work perfectly was a good way to die. But arguing with the instructor seemed pointless. The lesson continued with similar topics. Professor Weiland explained how to identify toxic atmosphere warnings, how to use emergency breathing apparatus, and how to locate emergency food supplies. Each explanation assumed that automated systems would provide clear guidance and that equipment would function as designed. Now we come to emergency evacuation procedures, Professor Weiland said, gesturing to another holographic display. In the event of a station-wide emergency, you must wait for official instructions before taking any action. Wait for instructions? Alex asked, what if communication systems are down? Communication systems have multiple backups, Professor Weiland replied patiently. If the primary system fails, secondary systems will activate automatically. If those fail, tertiary systems will take over. And if all three fail? Tom asked. Professor Weiland's expression showed mild annoyance. That is not possible. The Academy has never experienced a complete communication failure. In the observation area above, the alien students were clearly enjoying the exchange. Some were laughing quietly at what they saw as typical Deathworlder paranoia. Others were taking notes, apparently fascinated by the humans' focus on system failures. Perhaps we should move on to practical exercises, Professor Weiland suggested. Please follow me to the equipment station. The equipment station was filled with emergency supplies, breathing masks, portable oxygen generators, emergency food packs, and communication devices. Everything was neatly organized and clearly labeled. Each item has detailed instructions for use, Professor Weiland explained. Simply activate the help system and follow the prompts. Even beings from the most primitive worlds should be able to understand the procedures. Tom picked up a breathing mask and examined it. The design was elegant and sophisticated, but also complex. Multiple settings, digital displays, and automated features that could easily malfunction. On Earth, emergency equipment was built to be simple and reliable, not elegant and complicated. This seems overly complex for emergency use, Tom said. What if the display fails? The displays are designed to be indestructible, Professor Weiland replied. They cannot fail. Maria was examining a portable oxygen generator. How do you know if it's working if you can't see the display? Why would you need to know that? Professor Weiland asked. The device will automatically regulate itself. But what if, Maria began, she never finished the sentence. At that moment, every alarm in the Academy began sounding at once. Not the neat, organized tones that Professor Weiland had described, but a chaotic mixture of different warnings from different systems. The lights flickered and went out, replaced by dim emergency lighting. The holographic displays vanished. The equipment station's neat organization became meaningless as power fluctuations caused various devices to activate randomly. Professor Weiland stood frozen in the center of the room, his face showing complete bewilderment. This was not a scenario covered in his training materials. The Academy's perfect safety systems were failing in ways that were supposed to be impossible. What do we do? Professor Weiland asked, his voice barely audible over the alarms. Tom was already moving. While the instructor stood paralyzed, Tom went to the nearest emergency panel and began checking system readouts. The display was flickering badly, but he could make out enough information to understand what was happening. Solar flare, Tom announced. Massive electromagnetic pulse hit the station. Primary power is down, life support is running on backup, and multiple systems are failing. How can you tell? Professor Weiland asked. The pattern of failures, Tom replied, continuing to work at the emergency panel. Power goes first, then communication, then environmental controls. It's a cascade failure. In the observation area above, the alien students were no longer laughing. They were pressed against the transparent walls, watching the humans with expressions of growing alarm. Some were trying to use their personal devices to call for help, but the communication systems were down. Maria had moved to another emergency station and was manually checking atmospheric readings. Oxygen levels are dropping in sections 4 through 7, she reported. We need to get people out of those areas. How do you know that? Professor Weiland asked, his voice rising with panic. Manual gauge readings? Maria replied, pointing to analog displays that most people ignored. Digital systems are unreliable during electromagnetic events. Alex was at the equipment station, sorting through the emergency supplies. He was ignoring the complex devices with their dead displays and selecting the simplest, most reliable items he could find. We need to organize evacuation of the affected areas, Alex said. These portable oxygen units still work, but we need to test them manually. Professor Weiland stared at the 3 humans as they worked with calm efficiency. They were not following the procedures he had taught. They were not waiting for official instructions. They were taking charge of a situation that was completely outside his experience. But the protocols, Professor Weiland said weakly, we must follow proper procedures. The protocols don't work when the systems fail, Tom replied. We need to adapt. In the observation area, the alien students were beginning to panic. Cut off from their normal communication and support systems, they had no idea what to do. Some were trying to break through the transparent walls. Others were huddled together, overwhelmed by the chaos, but below them, 3 humans from a primitive death world were calmly taking control of a disaster that the Academy's best safety systems had never imagined possible. The real lesson was about to begin. The emergency had been unfolding for exactly 3 minutes when Tom made his first command decision. The Academy's perfect safety systems were failing in cascade, but the 3 humans moved through the chaos with a purpose that seemed almost supernatural to their alien observers. Maria, we need to get to the central environmental controls, Tom said, his voice cutting through the noise of alarms and confused shouting. If the backup life support fails, we'll have maybe 20 minutes before people start passing out. Maria nodded and headed toward the exit, stepping over debris from a collapsed display panel. She moved with confidence through the emergency lighting, using hand signals to communicate when the noise made talking difficult. Alex was already organizing the emergency supplies, but not in the way Professor Weiland had taught. He ignored the sophisticated equipment with its dead digital displays and focused on simple, mechanical devices that would work regardless of power failures. These oxygen masks are too complex, Alex said, holding up one of the Academy's standard emergency units. Look at this. He showed Professor Weiland a device that required 3 different activation steps and constant monitoring through a digital interface. But those are the approved emergency masks, Professor Weiland protested. They have been tested and certified for all Academy students. They're designed for a world where technology always works, Alex replied. He found a storage compartment, labeled obsolete equipment, and pulled out simpler masks that activated with a single switch. These are better for actual emergencies. Tom was working at the emergency control panel, but his approach was completely different from what the Academy taught. Instead of following the step-by-step procedures displayed on the screen, he was bypassing automated systems and making manual adjustments. The computer is trying to balance power distribution across all systems, Tom explained to Professor Weiland. But that's not what we need right now. We need to prioritize life support and emergency lighting. You cannot override the automated systems, Professor Weiland said. They are designed to maintain optimal balance. They're designed for normal operations, Tom replied, continuing to work. This isn't normal. Above them in the observation area, the alien students were discovering that their academic excellence meant nothing in a real crisis. Reth was trying to use his personal communicator to contact security, but the electromagnetic interference made it impossible. The communication system is down, Reth announced to the other students. We cannot call for help. Then we should wait here until help arrives, Nala suggested. The Academy's emergency teams will handle the situation. But Nix was watching the humans below with growing amazement. Look at them, he said. They are not waiting for help. They are fixing the problems themselves. The alien students pressed against the transparent walls, watching as Tom systematically restored power to critical systems. He was not following any procedure they had learned, but somehow he knew exactly which circuits to prioritize and which systems could be safely shut down. How does he know what to do? Asked a Centaurian student. He has only been here for a week. He's from a death world, another student replied. Maybe that's how they survive on such dangerous planets. Maria had reached the environmental controls and was manually adjusting oxygen flow to different sections of the station. The digital monitoring systems were unreliable, so she was using her own senses to determine where the air was getting thin. Section 7 is getting worse, Maria called out. We need to evacuate everyone from that area. How can you tell? Professor Weiland asked. The atmospheric sensors are not functioning properly. I can smell it, Maria replied. The air recycling system is backing up. You can smell the carbon dioxide buildup. Professor Weiland looked confused. But the Academy's atmospheric systems are completely automated. We do not need to monitor them manually. You do when they break down, Maria said. She was already moving toward Section 7, carrying portable oxygen units. Someone needs to get people out of there before they start having trouble breathing. Alex took charge of organizing the emergency supplies. He divided the working equipment into groups and assigned priorities based on immediate need rather than official importance. The alien students in the observation area watched in fascination as he created an efficient distribution system in minutes. You, Alex called up to the observation area. Can you get down here? Several alien students nodded and found their way to the main safety center. They stood uncertainly in the doorway, waiting for instructions. We need you to carry these oxygen units to different sections, Alex explained. The people in sections 4 through 7 are going to need them soon. But we are not trained for emergency response, one of the students protested. We should wait for the proper authorities. The proper authorities are dealing with the main power failure, Alex replied. People need help now. Tom had restored partial power to the critical systems, but the situation was still dangerous. The electromagnetic interference was continuing, and more systems were failing as the solar flare activity increased. We need to establish communication with the rest of the station, Tom said. The intercom system is down, but we might be able to use the maintenance network. The maintenance network is not designed for general communication, Professor Weiland said. It is only for technical staff. Right now, we're the technical staff, Tom replied. He was already connecting to the maintenance system, using protocols that most Academy students had never seen. The alien students who had volunteered to help were discovering that working with humans was a completely different experience. Instead of following detailed procedures, the humans gave simple, clear instructions and expected immediate action. Don't overthink it, Maria told a group of Altarian students who were trying to figure out the proper protocol for distributing oxygen units. Just get them to people who need them. If someone looks like they're having trouble breathing, give them a mask. But what if we make a mistake? One of the students asked. Then we'll fix it, Maria replied. But doing nothing is worse than making a mistake. This philosophy was completely alien to students who had grown up in a world where mistakes were prevented by careful planning and automated systems. The idea that action was better than inaction, even with the risk of error, challenged everything they had learned. Tom had established communication with other parts of the station and was coordinating emergency response efforts. He was not following the Academy's emergency protocols, but creating new ones based on the actual situation. Central Command, this is Safety Center, Tom said into the maintenance communicator. We have partial power restored and are organizing evacuation of sections 4 through 7. Who is this? Came the reply. Emergency response teams have not been dispatched to Safety Center. This is Tom Anderson, human student. We're handling the situation here. There was a pause. You are not authorized to coordinate emergency response. With respect, sir, we're the only ones who are responding, Tom replied. We have alien students helping distribute oxygen and Professor Weiland is coordinating with environmental controls. Professor Weiland looked surprised to hear himself described as coordinating anything, but he was indeed following Tom's suggestions and finding that they worked better than the official procedures. The crisis continued for another hour, but the immediate danger had passed. The humans had organized an effective response using resources that the Academy's emergency planners had never considered. Simple equipment, manual procedures, and the willingness to act without official authorization had saved lives. As the main power systems came back online and normal operations resumed, the alien students found themselves looking at the three humans with completely different eyes. The primitive Deathworlders had not just survived the emergency. They had taken charge of it. How did you know what to do? Reth asked Tom as they stood in the restored safety center. We didn't, Tom replied. We just did what needed to be done. But you had no training for this specific situation, Nala pointed out. The Academy's emergency procedures did not cover this scenario. That's why we ignored them, Maria said. Emergency procedures are guidelines, not rules. When the situation changes, you have to adapt. The alien students struggled to understand this concept. They had been taught that safety came from following established procedures and trusting in automated systems. The idea that true safety required the ability to improvise and take independent action was revolutionary. Alex was cleaning up the emergency supplies, sorting the equipment back into organized categories. The thing about emergencies, he said, is that they're always different from what you expect. You can't plan for every possible situation. Then how do you prepare? Asked Nix. You learn to think, Alex replied. You learn to recognize problems and solve them with whatever tools you have available. As the alien students filed out of the safety center, they carried with them a new understanding of what it meant to be from a death world. It wasn't about being primitive or dangerous. It was about being prepared for a universe that didn't always work the way it was supposed to. The medical bay was unusually quiet for a facility that had just handled a station-wide emergency. Most of the injuries had been minor, a few cases of oxygen deprivation, some cuts from broken equipment, and several students who had panic attacks during the crisis. But the real damage was not physical. Tom sat on a medical bed while a healing scanner repaired a cut on his arm from a broken display panel. The device hummed softly as it worked, but he was more interested in the conversation happening at the next bed. I still cannot believe we froze like that, Reth was saying to Nala. When the alarm started, I just stood there waiting for instructions. We all did, Nala replied. That is what we were taught to do. Wait for proper authority, follow established procedures. But the humans did not wait, Reth continued. They immediately began taking action. It was like they knew exactly what to do. Dr. Kalin approached the group of students, carrying a medical tablet. The Altarian physician looked tired but relieved. The final casualty report shows minimal injuries, Dr. Kalin announced. Thanks to the quick response in the safety center, we avoided what could have been a much more serious situation. It was not our response, Reth said quietly. It was theirs. He nodded toward the three humans. Maria was helping Alex with a bandage on his hand. We just did what anyone would do, she said. We saw a problem and tried to fix it. But that is not what anyone would do, Nix interrupted. He had been standing silently near the wall, but now he stepped forward. We did not do that. None of us did that. Tom looked around the medical bay and saw the faces of alien students who were struggling with a new realization. They had always assumed that their advanced education and sophisticated technology made them superior to beings from primitive worlds. The emergency had shattered that assumption. Why did we react so differently? Asked a Centaurian student who had been in the observation area. We are supposed to be the best students in the galaxy. You are the best students, Tom replied. But being a good student and handling emergencies are different skills. I don't understand, the student said. Maria finished helping Alex and turned to address the group. You've all grown up in a world where everything works perfectly. Your technology is reliable, your environment is safe, and your systems have backups for the backups. That's wonderful, but it also means you've never had to deal with real problems. We have emergency training, Reth protested. We know the proper procedures. You know procedures that work when everything else is working? Alex corrected. But what happens when the procedures don't cover the situation? What happens when the systems fail and you have to improvise? The alien students exchanged glances. This was not a scenario they had ever considered. In their world, systems did not fail completely, and improvisation was unnecessary because proper planning prevented problems. Dr. Kalin had been listening to the conversation with growing interest. Are you saying that your world's dangers actually prepared you for this type of crisis? In a way, Tom replied. On Earth, we grow up expecting things to go wrong. Equipment breaks down, weather turns dangerous, and sometimes you have to solve problems with whatever tools you have available. But that sounds terrible, Nala said. Living in constant fear of danger. It's not fear, Maria corrected. It's awareness. We're not afraid of problems, we're ready for them. Professor Weiland entered the medical bay, looking more composed than he had during the emergency. He approached the group of students with obvious embarrassment. I owe you an apology, Professor Weiland said to the three humans. My safety training was completely inadequate for the situation we face today. It wasn't inadequate, Tom replied. It was designed for a different kind of world. A world where systems work the way they're supposed to. But systems can fail. Professor Weiland said, Today proved that. How do I teach students to handle situations that our procedures don't cover? You teach them to think, Alex said. Not just to follow instructions, but to understand why the instructions exist and when they need to be changed. This concept was revolutionary for beings who had been educated in a system that emphasized following established procedures and trusting in automated systems. The idea that students should be prepared to override official protocols was almost unthinkable. The Academy Council has asked me to speak with you, Dr. Kalin said to the humans. They want to understand how you were able to respond so effectively to a crisis that overwhelmed our normal systems. We told you, Maria said. We're from a dangerous world. We're used to dealing with problems. But it was more than that. Reth insisted. You did not just deal with problems. You anticipated them. You saw system failures before they happened. You knew which equipment would work and which would not. Tom thought about how to explain something that was instinctive to humans but completely foreign to aliens from peaceful worlds. When you grow up on a world that's trying to kill you, you learn to read danger signs. You learn to recognize when something is about to go wrong, and you learn to prepare for it. Your world is trying to kill you? Asked a student who had been quietly listening, not intentionally, Tom replied. But Earth has natural disasters, dangerous weather, predators, and equipment that breaks down at the worst possible times. If you can't handle those situations, you don't survive. That is horrible, Nala said softly. It's not horrible, Maria corrected. It's just different. Those challenges made us stronger and more adaptable. Dr. Kalin was taking notes on his medical tablet. The Academy Council wants to know if you would be willing to share your insights with other students. Perhaps we need to reconsider our approach to emergency training. We're not teachers. Alex said, We're just students like everyone else. But you have knowledge that could save lives? Professor Weiland pointed out. Today proved that our current safety training is insufficient. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of more alien students. Word had spread throughout the academy about what had happened in the safety center, and many students wanted to understand how the humans had managed to take control of the situation. Is it true that you can predict equipment failures? Asked a student who had just arrived. We can recognize warning signs, Tom replied. But anyone can learn to do that if they know what to look for. Could you teach us? The student asked eagerly. Tom looked at Maria and Alex, who both nodded. We could try, Tom said, but it's not just about learning facts. It's about changing the way you think about problems. Over the following days, the three humans found themselves in an unprecedented situation. Instead of attending remedial safety classes, they were asked to design new emergency training programs. The Academy's administrators had realized that their perfect safety systems had created a dangerous vulnerability, students who could not function when those systems failed. We need to teach students to be comfortable with uncertainty, Tom explained to a group of Academy instructors. Not everything can be predicted or controlled. Sometimes you have to make decisions without complete information. But that could lead to mistakes, one instructor protested. Yes, Maria agreed. But making mistakes is better than making no decisions at all. During the emergency, we made several mistakes, but we also saved lives. How do we teach students to accept that level of risk? Another instructor asked. You start small, Alex suggested. Give them problems that don't have perfect solutions. Teach them to work with equipment that isn't completely reliable. Show them that they can handle uncertainty. The changes did not happen overnight, but they did happen. The Academy began offering new courses in emergency response, taught by humans who had grown up expecting systems to fail. The alien students, once condescending toward the primitive Deathworlders, now competed for spots in classes that taught them to think like survivors. Reth was one of the first to sign up for the new training program. I want to learn to see danger the way you do, he told Tom during one of their sessions. It's not about seeing danger, Tom replied. It's about being prepared for it. You can't teach millions of years of evolution in a classroom, but you can teach people to think differently about problems. What do you mean? Instead of assuming everything will work perfectly, assume that something will go wrong. Then ask yourself, what would I do if the primary system failed? What if the backup failed too? What if I had to solve this problem with completely different tools? Reth practiced this new way of thinking, and gradually he began to notice things he had never seen before. Equipment that seemed to be working perfectly but showed subtle signs of stress. Procedures that worked well in theory but might fail in practice. Systems that were vulnerable to types of failure that no one had considered. This is exhausting, Reth complained after a particularly challenging training session. How do you live with this constant awareness of potential problems? You get used to it, Tom replied, and it becomes automatic. You don't think about it consciously, you just notice things and respond appropriately. The transformation was gradual but profound. The alien students learned to question their assumptions about safety and reliability. They learned to work with imperfect tools and incomplete information. Most importantly, they learned that being prepared for danger was not the same as living in fear. You have changed the Academy, Dr. Kalin told the three humans during their final week at the station. Our students are learning skills that we never knew they needed. We just shared what we knew, Maria replied. Everyone was capable of learning these things. They just needed to be taught differently. Will you consider staying longer? Dr. Kalin asked. The Academy would be honored to have you as permanent instructors. Tom looked at his friends and smiled. We're students, not teachers. We came here to learn, not to teach. But you have taught us so much, Reth said. He had become one of the most dedicated students in the new emergency response program. You showed us that there is more to survival than following procedures. You taught yourselves, Alex replied. We just gave you a different way to think about problems. As the three humans prepared to return to Earth, they reflected on their time at the Academy. They had come expecting to be treated as primitive beings who needed special instruction in basic safety. Instead, they had discovered that their primitive world had taught them skills that the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had never developed. The Academy's new emergency training program would continue long after the humans left, teaching alien students to think like survivors from a dangerous world. And throughout the galaxy, other institutions would begin to recognize that beings from Deathworlds possess knowledge that could not be learned from textbooks or simulations. Tom stood at the observation window in their quarters, looking out at the stars beyond the station. Do you think we actually helped them? He asked. We gave them tools they didn't have before, Maria replied. What they do with those tools is up to them. I hope they never need to use them, Alex added. But if they do, at least they'll be ready. The three humans had learned something important during their time at the academy. That's survival skills. Were not primitive or backwards, but essential knowledge that every intelligent being should possess. They had also learned that the galaxy was full of beings who were brilliant and accomplished, but who had never been taught the most basic lesson of all, that sometimes, despite all your planning and preparation, things go wrong, and when they do, you have to be ready to adapt and survive.